The officials just confirmed it. Sophie Cunningham is done for the season. A torn MCL, a brutal foul, and a moment that fans are calling the dirtiest play of the year.
Unfortunately, we have the horrific, terrible news that Sophie Cunningham is officially out for the rest of the season with a torn MCL.
But here's the twist. Sophie finally spoke after the injury, and her message wasn't just about Bria Hartley, it was about the league, the referees, and the haters who've been waiting for this moment. What Sophie said after that collision, you need to hear it for yourself.
I'm officially 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA.
Holy shit. For this?
The moment looked ordinary at first, just another drive to the basket, just another collision in a physical game. But within seconds, you realize this wasn't routine at all. Bria Hartley came crashing down, her body folding awkwardly into Sophie Cunningham's right leg. And the sound that followed is something Fever fans will never forget. Sophie's scream cut through the noise of the arena, the kind of sound that instantly tells you, this is serious. The crowd went silent, thousands of people holding their breath as Sophie stayed on the floor clutching her knee. Teammates sprinted toward her, trainers rushed out, and on the Fever bench, you could see it in their faces. They already knew this was more than just a hard fall. Sophie Cunningham is one of the toughest players in the WNBA. This is someone who's played through pain, through ankle injuries, through collisions that would keep most people down. She doesn't cry. She doesn't stay down. For her to collapse like that, screaming, unable to move, it told you everything.
The hits just keep coming for the Indiana Fever. Not unexpected that Sophie Cunningham ruled out for the season, but devastating nonetheless as the injuries just continue to pile up. Of course, Sydney Colson already out for the season, Ari McDonald out for the season, and now Sophie Cunningham out for the season. That's with Caitlin Clark still out and having been out for much of the season.
This wasn't just another knock, something inside her knee had given out. Minutes later, the diagnosis confirmed what everyone feared, a torn MCL in her right knee. Her season officially over. No chance to fight her way back in 2025, gone in an instant. And the timing couldn't have been worse. The Fever were already broken down by injuries, Ari McDonald done for the year, Damaris Dantas sidelined, and Caitlin Clark missing time with her own setbacks.
This is terrible. You don't want to see anybody go out, especially with an injury. And Sophie Cunningham has been kind of like the heartbeat of this team with Caitlin Clark being out. She's like the first player we actually seen come out and stand up for Caitlin Clark and have her back. So this definitely sucks. And beyond her having Caitlin Clark back, her play on the floor.
Sophie had become the glue, the fighter, the spark that kept the locker room alive. Losing her didn't just hurt the team's rotation, it ripped out part of their identity. But the most shocking part of that night wasn't even the injury itself. It was what came after. As Sophie writhed on the hardwood, cameras picked up Bria Hartley, the same player who had just fallen into her knee, smiling.
Guys, it's despicable. It really is. There's a lot of people celebrating this injury. And guess what? You can imagine who it is. It's members of the old WNBA fandom, the ones that root for Paige Beckers and Angel Reese and Asia Wilson and all the usual damn suspects.
That single frame spread across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram in minutes. To some, it looked like nothing. To others, it looked sinister. A grin in the middle of a teammate's agony. And for fans already frustrated with how the Fever, and especially Caitlin Clark, had been targeted all season long, that smile was gasoline on an already burning fire. They didn't see an accident, they saw intent, they saw a player who went too far. That's why this moment hit so hard. It wasn't just Sophie going down, it was everything it represented. The cheap shots, the lack of protection from officials, the WNBA leadership staying silent while players are left unprotected. This play became the breaking point, and if you're watching this right now, take a second to stand with Sophie. Drop a pray for Sophie in the comments, because as fans, we can't stop the injuries, but we can make sure her fight, her toughness, and her voice don't get ignored. Because the truth is, this wasn't just a fall, this was the spark of a storm that the league still hasn't answered for.
Sophie announcing her being out with an MCL tear, which, by the way, the MCL tear, relatively speaking, is good news because it's not an ACL tear. She's not out for like a year or anything, but she's out for the rest of this year. And they're going to miss her toughness. They're going to miss her shooting. They're going to miss her playmaking to a degree.
If the injury itself broke Fever fans' hearts, the smile that followed lit a fire under the entire league. Seconds after Sophie Cunningham was carried off the floor, cameras zoomed in on Bria Hartley, and there it was, a grin not the concerned face of a competitor, not the shock of someone who'd just seen another player's season end, a grin. That single frame exploded across social media within minutes. Twitter threads, TikTok edits, Instagram stories. Fans froze the clip, zoomed in, and shared it again and again. The reaction was instant and furious. "How can you smile after that?" one fan wrote. Another said, flat out, "She knew what she did." And the harshest comments didn't stop there. Words like dirty, reckless, and even sick flooded her mentions. This wasn't just about one photo. To a lot of fans, Hartley already had a reputation. Earlier in the season, she'd been ejected after an ugly clash with Rebecca Allen in a Connecticut versus Chicago game. Not long after, she was caught yanking Angel Reese's hair during a scramble for a rebound. Clips of those moments resurfaced immediately. Suddenly, the grin didn't look like bad timing, it looked like part of a pattern. And once that perception takes hold online, it's impossible to stop. Comment sections turned into battlefields. Some defended Hartley, calling it a heat-of-the-moment misunderstanding, but the majority weren't buying it. They saw Sophie's pain on one side of the screen and Hartley's smirk on the other. To them, that was all the proof they needed. The WNBA could have stepped in right there, clarified the play, explained why no foul was upgraded, given some kind of accountability. Instead, silence. No suspension, no statement, no review, and that silence said more than words ever could. It told fans the league wasn't going to protect Sophie, just like they hadn't protected Caitlin Clark from the elbows, the hard fouls, and the constant targeting all season long. So the grin became more than a picture. It became a symbol of everything fans hate about how this league is being run. Before Sophie could even speak, her family stepped in, and they weren't holding back. Her sister Lindsay went straight at the league. In a post that spread like wildfire, she blasted the WNBA's officiating, calling it pathetic and pointing out the obvious. The league seemed more focused on finding players for speaking out than actually protecting them from dangerous plays. "Maybe you should focus less on finding players," she wrote, "and more on hiring officials that can call a consistent game and protect your athletes." It wasn't polished PR, it wasn't sugar-coated, it was raw, emotional, and exactly what thousands of fans had been screaming online for weeks. Their mom, Paula, piled on too. In a now-deleted post, she called Bria Hartley reckless and out of control, suggesting this wasn't the first time she'd crossed the line, and even though she took it down later, the damage was done. Screenshots spread everywhere. Fans finally had confirmation of what they were already thinking. If Sophie's own family believed Hartley was a problem, maybe the league should start listening. And that's why their words hit so hard. They weren't just random angry fans online. This was Sophie's inner circle, the people who know her better than anyone, echoing the same frustration as the entire Fever fan base. The effect was immediate. Media outlets picked it up. Comment sections turned into rally cries. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a knee injury anymore. It was about the integrity of the league itself. And in the middle of that firestorm, everyone waited for one voice, Sophie's, because sooner or later she was going to break her silence. And when she finally did, her message stunned everybody. When Sophie finally spoke, nobody knew which version of her they were going to hear. Would it be anger? Would it be blame? Or would she rise above the noise? Her first response came quietly, not on social media, but on her podcast. Sitting behind the mic, Sophie took a deep breath and shocked everyone.
I know Bria, and I'm actually really good friends with Bria, and I have been waiting to get on the pod and so we could talk about this because I did want to tweet it out, but I don't think that there was no ill intent. I think it was basketball play. I was just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. She fell. Like, there's no way that she would go in there and potentially try to hurt me. And so, I had nothing but love for Bria. And I even told my mom, cause she tweeted something. I was like, no, mom, I get it. But I promise you that I was like, Bria and I are super cool. And she would never try to hurt me. Cause there are some girls that I think might, but she wouldn't do that. And so, I have nothing but love. And so I hope people stop giving Bria some heat because I don't think she meant to do that at all. I'm officially 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA.
Holy shit. For this? For the pod? Again?
They didn't like my comments on Paige Becker's.
No way.
I didn't even say anything bad.
On the whistle? On the quick whistle?
She didn't accuse Bria Hartley. She didn't join the chorus of voices calling her dirty. Instead, she called it what she believed it was, a basketball play gone wrong. "I was in the wrong spot at the wrong time," she said calmly. There was no way Bria would ever try to hurt me. We're actually really good friends. It was the last thing people expected. Here was Sophie sidelined with a season-ending torn MCL, her career momentum suddenly ripped away, and she was defending the very player fans were blaming. That kind of maturity is rare. It showed perspective. It showed heart. But it also surprised the people who wanted her to come out swinging. And just when fans thought Sophie was going to take the high road and leave it at that, she flipped the script. Days later on social media, Sophie dropped a line that hit like a thunderbolt. Some of us were raised by the words, "Don't bite off more than you can chew." And some of us didn't F around and find out. No podcast tone, no calm explanation, just fire. A single post, short and sharp, that immediately went viral. For her supporters, it was the perfect balance. The podcast showed her integrity. The post showed her fight. Together, it painted a picture of someone who wasn't going to be defined as a victim. She could forgive Bria, but she wasn't going to let the league, the refs, or the haters write her story for her. Fans loved it. Screenshots of the post spread like wildfire, comment sections flooded with support, and the message was clear. Sophie Cunningham may be out for the season, but she's not backing down from anyone. But here's the thing. As bold as that post was, it also forced the spotlight back onto a bigger issue that's been eating away at the WNBA for years, because Sophie's words weren't just about one collision, they were about accountability. Sophie's injury wasn't just bad luck to fans, it was the latest proof of a broken system. Think about it, Sophie gets taken out by a dangerous collision, and the refs don't even stop the game for a review. No flagrant, no upgrade, no suspension. Just play on like nothing happened. But when Sophie or other players have spoken up about officiating, instant fines.
I'm officially 3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA.
Holy shit. For this? For the pod? Again?
They didn't like my comments on Paige Beckers.
No way.
I didn't even say anything bad.
On the whistle? On the quick whistle?
Yeah. But like, why?
That double standard is exactly what her sister Lindsay called out, and it's exactly why fans are furious. The WNBA moves quickly when players criticize refs, but drags its feet when players' bodies are actually on the line. And this isn't just about Sophie. Caitlin Clark has been hacked, shoved, and elbowed all year long with barely a whistle. Angel Reese has been knocked around. Aja Wilson takes constant contact. The league keeps preaching about growing the game, but how do you grow anything if your stars aren't even safe on the court? For Sophie, this wasn't some abstract issue. She knows the cost. She's been fined multiple times herself just for being honest about officiating, even once when she dared to bring up Paige Buchers. She laughed about it on her podcast, saying she was 3 for 3 on fines. But underneath that laugh, the message was clear. The WNBA's priorities are backwards. Instead of protecting the players who put their health on the line every night, the league protects its image. Instead of accountability, it chooses silence. And in the end, that silence is exactly what makes moments like Sophie's injury feel inevitable. Because when refs are told to let them play, what does that really mean? More reckless collisions, more dangerous contact, more players like Sophie Cunningham watching the rest of the season from the sidelines. And while the league stayed quiet, Sophie herself sent the loudest message, reminding everyone that if the officials won't protect her, she'll speak for herself. But as Indiana tried to process losing Sophie, something happened that nobody expected. For most teams, losing Sophie Cunningham would have been the breaking point. Already without Caitlin Clark, already down multiple guards to season-ending injuries, and now their toughest, loudest competitor ripped away with a torn MCL. By the middle of the third quarter, the scoreboard told the story everyone expected. Connecticut Sun 63, Indiana Fever 42, a 21-point deficit on the road against one of the most experienced rosters in the league. That should have been it. That should have been the night the Fever folded, walked into the locker room, and quietly accepted their season was slipping away. But instead, something clicked. Kelsey Mitchell cheated, a player who has often been overshadowed in the headlines by rookies and bigger names, decided this wasn't going to be a funeral. In just 2 quarters and an overtime, she unleashed one of the most electrifying performances in Fever history. 38 points, 34 of them after halftime. She drained shots from everywhere, pulling up from deep, slicing into the lane, knocking down free throws under pressure. When the game went into overtime, Mitchell scored Indiana's first 10 points by herself, ripping control away from Connecticut and making sure this comeback was going to belong to her. And as Mitchell kept scoring, the rest of the team found their fire. Aaliyah Boston fought inside like a veteran twice her age, grinding out 14 points and 13 rebounds against one of the toughest front courts in the league. Natasha Howard added 18 and 9, keeping the Suns' defense guessing every possession. Then came the shot that sealed it all. Lexi Hull, standing in the corner in overtime, calmly draining a 3 with 44 seconds left to give Indiana the lead for good. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was the dagger that made the greatest comeback in Fever history official. From down 21 to walking off with a 99-93 win in overtime. This was more than just a victory, it was a statement. After the game, Coach Stephanie White didn't talk about X's and O's. She talked about grit, about connectedness, about a toughness you can't teach. And watching those players hug each other on the floor, you could feel it. Indiana wasn't just playing basketball, they were playing for Sophie, because if there's one thing the Fever showed that night, it's that even when the league fails to protect them, they'll protect each other. But as powerful as that comeback was, it didn't erase the bigger issue. Sophie's injury had already become more than just a game story. It had turned into a symbol and a rallying cry that fans weren't letting go. When the final buzzer sounded that night in Connecticut, the Fever had made history, but nobody forgot what came before it. Sophie Cunningham being carried off the floor, her season ending in pain. And that's the hard truth. Sophie's torn MCL isn't just another injury, it's a turning point. A reminder of what happens when reckless play goes unchecked and officials stay silent. The outrage hasn't faded. Fans are still posting the photo of Bria Hartley's grin. They're still demanding accountability from Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. And they're still pointing out how fast the league fines players for words, but looks the other way when bodies are put at risk. Through it all, Sophie's voice has risen above the noise. On her podcast, she showed grace and loyalty, refusing to turn on a friend. But on social media, she showed fire, the kind of toughness that makes her more than just a role player. She's become a symbol of resilience in a league where stars are too often left unprotected, and maybe that's why fans feel this one so deeply. Because Sophie isn't just another athlete, she's the heartbeat of a team that refuses to quit. She's the teammate who always had Caitlin Clark's back, and now with her sidelined, the Fever and their fans are stepping up to have hers. The league can stay quiet, the refs can swallow their whistles, but the people watching, they won't. Every replay of that fall, every screenshot of that grin, every post calling out the hypocrisy is a reminder that fans aren't going to forget this moment. And neither will Sophie Cunningham. So if you're still here, if you believe Sophie deserves better, drop a pray for Sophie in the comments. Let her know she's not alone in this fight. Because, yes, her season is over. But her story, her voice, her fire, that's just getting started.